Strength training can make you a better student. Yes, strength training. Let's get into it. Hey, my name is Charpentier, and welcome to Less Than 3%, where we talk about healthcare, my journey becoming a physician, and really anything from the perspective of a black male pursuing medicine. And in this episode, I want to get into something that I think is pretty interesting and pretty fun, at least in my opinion. And I think it can really help a lot of people listening. And of course, on the podcast, we talk a lot of things, education, as that's a key element in really just a pursuit to becoming a physician, the amount of schooling and the amount of academics that it takes to get to that point. And in this episode, I want to talk about something that I think can really help anyone, especially people who are in school, especially those who may be in medicine, who are going through that rigorous path of schooling. And in this episode, I want to talk about how strength training can improve your ability to become a better student. So there's a couple questions I really just want to take a moment to answer in this podcast episode. For instance, how does strength training impact cognitive performance? Could other kinds of activity have this sort of effect? And what are some ways to incorporate this into regular activity? And for this, I want to get into a little bit of information that I think would really help us get a solid understanding when it comes to answering some of these questions. So the first thing I want to take a look at is an article written by Carolyn Amir titled How Weightlifting Helps Get the Brain in Shape. So ultimately, what they talk about is that long-term lifting can result in cognitive and neurological benefits. And I want to just highlight a couple of things that they point out that I think could really help us. They mentioned that as muscles increase in strength, so may connection between neurons and parts of the brain's motor system. Additionally, I want to really highlight some of the studies that they bring up. For instance, they mentioned that measurable behavioral effects may accompany these invisible changes. Resistance training can have substantial effects on cognition, with neural changes involving cognitive impairment and even cognitive decline. So they get a little bit specific into some of the neurology behind it. They mentioned that weight training has actually been shown to protect subregions of the hippocampus, which is a brain region involved in cognition and long-term memory, from degeneration in populations at risk for Alzheimer's disease. So what they're basically showing here is that weight training can actually have such a profound effect when it comes to the brain that it could actually be helping prevent certain risk factors even that would play into diseases such as Alzheimer's. So ultimately preventing certain conditions and really helping allow people to be in the best state they can be when it comes to their cognitive performance and their health. They mentioned that age-related degeneration in the hippocampus is common among aging populations, and so weight training can really help to combat that sort of decline. Now, to go a little bit further, they reference a study that was done in 2019 that demonstrated that weight training can reduce mild cognitive impairment, and it could even reverse memory loss in rodents. So not only is this helping prevent certain conditions, some of this research really shows promise that it can really be doing things to improve cognitive function and different aspects that have to do with it. Now, they mentioned that researchers are still investigating the dose-response effect of strength training, and so this can only be interpreted so much, but this does definitely show promise in terms of the impact that strength training can have when it comes to cognitive ability. Now, to get even more specific, I want to look at some research that's highlighted on a paper published on the University of Sydney's website. It's titled Strength Training Can Help Protect the Brain from Degeneration. So this really corroborates some of the points that I mentioned from the last paper. So looking at some of the details of the study that they mentioned, study participants were randomly allocated to do computerized brain training, strength training, and combined computer and strength training, which they did for just 6 months, and then afterwards went back to their usual activity for 12 months. And so ultimately they were able, in a sense, to contrast their time going into a lot of strength training alongside some computerized brain training, and then also looking at their brain activity when it came to 12 months of doing their usual activity. And what they found in the results was that long-term speaking, strength training led to overall benefits to cognitive performance, benefits linked to protection from degeneration in specific subregions of the hippocampus. And looking at the results of the long-term study, they found that strength training led to overall benefits to cognitive performance, and there were benefits linked to protection from degeneration in specific subregions of the hippocampus. And just to really show the extent of this research and how they arrived at these conclusions, they did MRI brain scans of the participants 3 times over this entire 18-month period and we're able to find the changes that were going on within the hippocampus. So this really highlights the evidence that strength training can really have a significant impact when it comes to cognitive performance and ultimately allowing people to be in the best state that they can be. And just taking a moment to think about some of the factors that were brought up, like cognitive performance and avoiding brain degeneration and the potential of improving memory. All of these things, I would say, are definitely factors that contribute to a student, that contribute to the life of a student and being able to focus and study and prepare for exams. And so I think this just really shows that when it comes to strength training, this can help to improve certain things that help to make us better students. So in case for whatever reason that's not enough evidence, there's a little bit more that I want to take a look at, specifically a paper that was written by Alicia Rohan, which can be found on the University of Alabama's website. And so this paper goes into detail about a study that was done by the University of Alabama at Birmingham. So they mentioned a meta-analysis that was done using 20 published papers to really take a look at the big picture evidence that resistance exercise programs could help improve both cognitive and, of course, physical health. As a result of this study, they found a positive impact of resistance training on composite cognitive scores, cognitive screening measures, and measures of executive function, although they didn't find an effect on measures of working memory. One of the things they also conclude is in terms of the role of exercise duration, frequency, and intensity. So these are also factors that come with strength training. How is it also being done? But I do definitely think it's important to be able to focus in on the fact that strength training in and of itself seems to really be having a positive impact when it comes to the brain and cognitive ability. In fact, taking a quick look back at the paper published on the University of Sydney website, they reference that participants in the study did supervised strength training for just 90 minutes in total each week over 2 to 3 weekly sessions. So this is just an example of how, just off of a couple sessions a week, they were able to see those results that were found in that study in terms of there being benefits on positive effects on the brain. Now, with all that being said, I think it's pretty clear that there really seems to be some evidence there that strength training can really help benefit you when it comes to cognitive ability. And of course, one of the questions I do also want to answer is, are there any other activities that can help to also produce this effect? For instance, in that same paper that was on the University of Sydney's website, they mentioned that there was computerized brain training along with strength training. And so are there also some other activities that can really help to improve cognitive function? And for that, I want to take a look at a paper that was written by John Johnson on medicalnewstoday.com. And they just list out a couple of brain exercises that can help to improve memory, cognition, and creativity. And so there are a couple things that I definitely think can be really helpful, even just to students, and things that we can maybe take time to do a little bit more of. For instance, a couple of things I mentioned here is learning new skills and learning a new language. These are things that I've even tried to take and apply to myself, whether it's trying to spend more time trying to play instruments or trying to challenge myself to learn a couple more languages. These are definitely things that you might even be able to add a sprinkle into your time just a little bit here and there in terms of some of the activities that you usually have going on a daily or on a weekly basis. Some of the other things that get brought up tie really directly, I would say really can tie directly to exercises like strength training. For instance, they mentioned dancing, they mentioned engaging in sports, they mentioned even practicing Tai Chi. So there are a lot of things that you can do to really get yourself physically involved that can really help you get some of those benefits that you may want to see. Just look at some of the effects that they mention. When looking at engaging in sports, it mentions that based off of a 2019 review, elite athletes who participate in high-demand sports tend to have improved attention and faster information processing speeds. The paper also mentions a 2019 study that compared brain function and connectivity among Tai Chi practitioners and those who didn't practice it. They mentioned that the Tai Chi practitioners had enhanced connectivity between different regions of their brain, and that it could potentially improve cognition and decrease the rate of memory loss. So maybe Tai Chi is something that you might want to consider taking up. The last thing that they mentioned on this list that I also want to bring up is sleeping. I think that's definitely an activity that a lot of us probably enjoy regardless. I think this would be a good moment opportunity just to mention how important sleep can really be, especially when it comes to academic success. Because I can definitely say, even from personal experience, that being able to take the time to try to sleep a good number of hours a night can definitely help in terms of my activity in the next morning and through the next day. So definitely don't discount sleep, even when it comes to all the studying that you may be trying to do, because it's definitely one of the most productive things that you can include in your schedule. And so with that being said, I think this really just ties together just a lot of the different practical things that I think can help really anyone, maybe not even just students. And so I think this really just serves as an opportunity to really reflect and think about the fact that it's definitely important that we partake in different things that can practically help us, because part of being a good student isn't necessarily just studying all the time, but making sure that we have a good balance of things that can help us to be more productive. And so I would say consider definitely taking up some of these different activities. Consider definitely doing some of these things that can serve as good brain exercises, physical exercises that can really help you to just be more productive as a person and ultimately as a student. And so with that being said, that really wraps up everything I want to talk about in this episode. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one.